So yeah, hello everybody again. Just to kick off, just want to say thanks for joining us on this Friday afternoon. We're joined obviously by Dr. Erik Reis, and I'll let you do the introductions rather than taking that thunder away from you. But yeah, an absolute pleasure to have you here, an expert in neuroscience and also a huge array of things. So I'll let you do the honors.
Yeah,
But yeah,
thanks, Dan.
as you go through the talk, and would you like questions as we go through? People put their hands up, or would you like questions at the end? How would you prefer it?
Yeah, to be fair, I think I've sat through enough virtual Zoom meetings where, I want this to be a conversation, not a lecture.
Okay,
So,
awesome.
the moment someone's got a question or they got a comment, I don't know how you guys do it from facilitating or from a host perspective, but just raise the hand. I'd much rather prefer for this to be a half an hour of us having a good conversation instead of me, telling you a bunch of things that you know or don't know. So, um, but happy to kind of give a background. I've spent the last 13 years in clinical practice. I run a neurorehabilitation clinic in Minnesota in the United States. So we focus on treating complex neurological conditions. So anything ranging from concussions, brain injuries, migraines, chronic pain, strokes, neurodegenerative conditions, you name it, we treat it in as many modalities in integrative therapies as possible. And what's been amazing about that journey is I've seen so many things change and so many people change as a result of that. And I think it's really challenged my perspective on what we are really truly capable of as humans and as people. And how that ties into my professional life as well is, back in 2020, we started our venture studio, Nobody Studios, just with a, pitch deck in our garage and a conversation that we wanted to have. And so here we are today. We're currently in the middle of a raise for Series A. So we got about a $15 million Series A that we're raising for, and a family office lead based out of London for that. And the whole goal with us as a venture studio is to essentially accelerate the ability for us to turn ideas into companies. Back in 2020, we didn't have ChatGPT. We didn't have these large language models. We didn't have the ability for Replit to put together an application within hours of me telling it what to do. And so, our goal back then was to say, could we build 100 companies in 5 years? And with how quickly things have evolved and changed and moved to today, we think that that's, a goal that's no longer that very audacious. So what I wanted to talk about today was essentially what I think the future is going to look like from a tech perspective, but more importantly, too, as founders and as entrepreneurs, like what are tools and tactics that you can use to continue to do what you want to do? And unfortunately, for a lot of people in the startup and the early company ecosystem stages, um, really at the end of the day, success is survival. It's not just making money and profit, although those are really essential things. Really, what it involves is it involves making multiple pivots. It involves having really, strong convictions about your North Star, but it also sometimes involves you making decisions where you have to change the course in the tactics that you're using. And so, um, I think first and foremost, I wanted to just kind of break down some really important parts about how we function and bringing in the clinical side of things of what I've done with, high performance coaching and some of the executives I've worked with and some of the patients that I've seen, and then tying that in together about just how I think companies of the future are going to be built. So, um, I would be remiss to say that one of the best parts about being alive in 2026 is that there's a vast amount of information and data around us, right? So you can all go type into your GPTs or to your Claudes or to your, Geminis and get as much information as possible. But knowledge is useless without application. And one of the things that I've realized clinically when working with patients is that most patients don't even have the baseline knowledge to actually even ask the fundamental question to get the answer that they're truly looking for. And I don't think that that's a problem necessarily only confined to medicine. I think a lot of times that's a problem that's confined to a lot of areas of our life. And even though we have access to a lot of information, I can't tell you how many times I've used large language models and gotten information that looks very convincing. And when you look under the hood, it's actually just hallucinated or false. Now, I'm not the only one that's experienced this. I know that for a fact. But what's important about that is that, especially in medicine, there's a lot of information out there that isn't necessarily factually true, but it could appear to be true. Just because you have pundits or individuals who have thousands of followers on, Instagram or LinkedIn telling you that you should be doing X to get the outcome for Y, doesn't necessarily mean that that's factually true. And so I think what's really important for us to understand And whether this is your personal life or professional life or a combination of both, you really can't separate those aspects when it comes to your health. I've talked to founders, and the irony is, I've spoken to founders who were building mental health applications, who were building startups to help people manage their mental health, improve their mental health, and treat their mental health. And what eventually happened is that they had to stop building that company because their mental health got so bad for building the company in the first place that they could no longer continue along that journey. The irony is not lost for me on that side of the house. And so I'm going to make the assumption that most of you in this group are founders, you're startup founders, you're entrepreneurs, or in some way, shape, or form, you're involved in business. There's a major difference between you waking up in the morning and feeling charged and energized and ready to go versus you waking up and not getting sleep and still having to go put an 8, 10, 12, 15-hour day at your business, isn't there? So what's really important to understand, and I have this conversation with patients all the time, and it doesn't matter if you're someone who's been dealing with chronic migraines, or you just had a stroke, or you just got into a really bad car accident and your brain's a bit of a mess. The fundamentals are foundational for the way that our brains and bodies function. And so a lot of people have been told these things, but I don't think they really necessarily understand why you're supposed to do the things that you've been told to do. So I kind of want to break that down a bit because I think it's really essential to understand structurally, neurologically, and even nutritionally or emotionally how these things manifest and why they matter. So for instance, right, we've all been told that sleep is a really important aspect for our health, right? I understand the irony of being told, hey, James, you should just sleep better at night. And you're like, listen, I'm already trying to do that, right? So I can't just will my way into doing something along those lines. But sleep is not just for restoring energy or allowing us to have more bandwidth during the day. What we actually know is that your sleep quality can actually impact your blood sugar levels. And yes, I said that correctly. So a poor night's sleep can actually make you teetering closer on the pre-diabetic side of things, or if you're already clinically diagnosed with it, can make you actually have more unstable blood sugar for the next following day. That's really interesting. Now, does that change the way that you would metabolize foods? Whether or not your breakfast is healthy for you, whether that coffee or the second or third one would impact you neurologically? Absolutely. And so, as much as sleep is a fundamental, sleep is so crucial, not only for your metabolic health, we also know that sleep can buffer stress responses. So, this circadian rhythm of sleep is really important for us, especially as entrepreneurs, because we're not necessarily going to get away from everyday stressors. We have stress 24/7. Our professional career and job is being a firefighter in our companies and trying to solve problems. And sleep and getting quality sleep is one of the most efficient ways for you to buffer those stress responses during the day. We also understand now that sleep is very beneficial for promoting quality of life and longevity. Okay. And so what we mean by that is getting quality sleep, but we know there are different stages of sleep. So you've maybe heard of like REM sleep, non-REM sleep, deep sleep, light sleep. The nuances don't necessarily matter, but what matters is the fact that you're getting adequate sleep and quality sleep because what we now know is that the sleep kind of has its own immune system or the brain has its own immune system. And during sleep, what happens is this immune system actually increases in its activity. So what your brain is doing during sleep is it's, shutting down different systems. But what we also know is that your brain is essentially taking out the day's trash in specific stages of deeper sleep stages. And that's really important for you because what happens if you don't take your trash out? Becomes a problem, right? As you're at your home, things start to smell. Things just kind of start rotting. Things become a little deprecated, right? The same thing happens in the brain. And if for anybody looking into the longevity space right now, everyone is talking about mitochondria, these little chemical production factories that produce energy, the ATP, which is like the cell's currency. What we know is those mitochondria respond to sleep cycles. And so if you aren't taking out the day's trash, what happens is old cells eventually stick around. It's kind of like throwing a bunch of construction cones on M25, and all of a sudden traffic slows down. Traffic maybe comes to a halt, efficiencies slow down. Sleep, poor sleep specifically, can make that happen more often because you're not clearing out the day's trash. Those beta and tau amyloid plaques we talk about with Alzheimer's, dementia, even Parkinson's, Those things are heavily impacted with sleep. And so sleep is no longer just saying, hey, you should just sleep 8 hours a night because it's going to give you more energy. It's actually there for brain health, mental health, but even emotional health. During sleep stages, in the deeper sleep stages, there are areas of your brain, specifically the emotional centers, that are more active during sleep than they are during the day. And so if you skip different sleep stages or different aspects of sleep, you're actually missing out on the mental health benefits of sleep as well. Now, all that sounds great, right? At the end of the day, people know that they need to sleep. And so if I just tell you to sleep better, like I said, that's not as easy. I'm going to give you a really simple algorithm to follow that helps for like 50 to 70% of my patients who are struggling with sleep. Now, if you have a proper like pathological sleep problem, like sleep apnea or anything along those lines, like insomnia, like, of course there are true medical interventions that need to happen. But one of my dear friends is a PhD researcher at UCLA. Her name is Gina Poe, and Gina's a neuroscientist, and she's absolutely brilliant, really well published researcher. And she told me sleep medications don't really work the way that we think that they work. They actually have a an effect where they stop you from forming memories, which means that you actually don't necessarily remember whether or not you slept well the night before. Now, there's other mechanisms there to produce neurotransmitters and try and help you get into different stages, but she said the best way for you to actually get sleep is to actually focus on your sleep habits. So there's a really quick rundown that I can give you to help you promote your sleep and improve your sleep. It's called the 3-2-1 rule. Okay. So essentially what you should do at night is you should, one, have a sleep routine. Okay. This is a super important aspect. Every single one of us should have it. You have one whether or not you think you do, right? Watching Netflix at night is still a sleep habit. It's just maybe not a good one. The 3-2-1 rule is as follows. 3 hours before you go to bed at night, you actually should stop eating any food or ingesting any food particles. Because the moment you ingest food, your neurological system and your metabolic system say, hey, okay, Neil, I think you're up for the day, so I'm going to actually keep you more awake in this stage. So within 3 hours of going to sleep, you should actually halt any food intake whatsoever, unless you have medications that you need to take with that, and that's a little asterisk. But 3 hours, no food within 3 hours of going to sleep. Within 2 hours, you should actually stop hydration. Now, for most of us in the room, as we get older, unfortunately, we know visits to the toilet and the restroom increase as we get older, right? And so it's part of that from a hydration standpoint, but you're not going to get dehydrated throughout the night if you don't drink water immediately before going to bed. That's actually a fallacy. One of the best things you can do is have a glass of water to be waiting for you on the bedside for the morning to immediately hydrate when you do wake up. That's a great response to have. But within 2 hours of going to sleep, you shouldn't be having any hydration. Within 1 hour of going to sleep, everybody knows this, but they rarely do it, is no screen time, right? So that's no phones, no tablets, no televisions, anything along those lines, because that blue light immediately hits the brain. It hits specific sleep centers in the brain called your suprachiasmatic nuclei. And what happens is it tells your brain, hey, you should stay up. And so even if you watch Netflix and you fall asleep straight away, you're actually going to dip between different sleep stages in an inefficient way, and it'll disrupt your sleep cycles. So if you can follow that 3-2-1 rule and follow it for 30, 60, or maybe even 90 days, you'll literally rewire neural circuits in your brain and you'll probably improve your sleep efficacy. So sleep is important. We've touched on sleep. We know that that's a factor. Let's talk about exercise, right? Now, everyone talks about, okay, we know we need exercise. We want to know how much exercise. I'm not telling you that you need to go run a marathon and start training for one right away. But any form of physical movement is absolutely, without a doubt, one of the best ROIs that you can have for your brain and for your business. And here's the reason why. My son is 9 months. He's 9 months old, and he's at the stage now where he's just playing on his stomach, he's crawling around, and he's starting to do things, right? There's a reason that we may base a child's development off of motor milestones. Because those motor milestones, those movements of the child, are literally developing the layers of the house of the brain. And the moment you miss some of those milestones, or the baby doesn't develop in a specific pattern, what you actually have happen is you have hardware that's no longer integrating with the software. And what we're noticing with kids who struggle with different types of neurodevelopmental issues is that some of those kids actually maybe have missed some of those early milestones and or they have different reflexes that were not suppressed by the higher development levels of the brain. So movement truly, truly is the language of the brain. And there's a reason why when astronauts go to space, they can't stay for very long and they have to exercise when they're up there. Gravity is always giving our nervous system feedback. You can think of gravity as constantly always giving us a perspective of where we are, what do we need to do to navigate, and like why is it important for us to be able to move? And the reason that movement and gravity is so impactful is that this feedback from our muscles and joints continuously and consistency activates the brain. Even when you're sleeping, you're still fighting gravity. So when you physically move your body in multiple planes, whether it's lifting weights, whether it's cardio exercises, whether it's doing Pilates or yoga, you're stimulating multiple areas of your brain. Movement is the fastest way to light your brain up like a Christmas tree. And you don't need to do an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours work to be able to do that. 20 to 30 minutes max is one of the best ways for you to get the maximum benefits of exercise without having to break the bank for taking an extra day to go and prioritize that. One of the really interesting things with exercise that we know is exercise is one of the most potent antidepressants out there. Now, if you ran a double-blind placebo-controlled study, and they've done these studies already, Australia now currently has exercise as one of the primary factors and primary treatments for people who are struggling with depression, anxiety, and even different forms of mental health disorders because of the impact of movement. It promotes more blood flow to the brain, it increases oxygenation, it can optimize cognitive function as well. Take a 5-10 minute walk before your next meeting and just see how different you feel. Your brain is literally going to change based off of those inputs. And so movement truly is the language of the brain. And there's a reason why it's one of the most potent anti-inflammatories. It can make you happier. It changes your neural circuitry. The only difference is it doesn't matter if you know those benefits. The only way to get it is to actually do it. Now, here's what I always suggest for people to do throughout the days. I use the Pomodoro technique. It's one of my hacks that I've used for productivity. It's essentially setting a timer for 25 minutes and only focusing on one task for those 25 minutes. When that 25 minutes is up, I have 5 minutes left before my next chunk of time. I will literally get up, I will leave my phone, I will leave my computer, and I will just take a 5 minute walk. Now, maybe you have access to do that, maybe you don't. It doesn't necessarily matter. The thought process is one, you're training your brain to be focused for 25 minutes to optimize that cognitive processing. But then two, is what you're really focusing on as well too is you're getting enough blood flow and oxygenation to make the brain have sustainability and bandwidth for the rest of the day. And it's also one of the best ways to lower your blood sugar after eating lunch. So movement has so many benefits and so many ways to help you not only improve your brain, but improve your business. The only thing that you have to do is you have to own it, right? So getting moving in every single day for at least 20 or 30 minutes is going to top out all of your reserves, give you all the benefits that you can. And on top of that as well, what we're also finding, this is the last caveat on exercise, we're finding that it's not necessarily as a society that we're gaining weight or that we're becoming, more sedentary. It's actually the fact that we're under muscled is also one of the biggest factors for us. So by building muscle, muscle is one of the most coveted aspects of your neurological and metabolic real estate because muscle is metabolically active. It also drives more feedback to the brain. And I'm not saying you have to go power lift, but even just bloating your body and moving and lifting weights or doing some sort of load-bearing activity can have magical effects for your brain and body for today, decades later, and even into your 70s, 80s, and 90s. And it doesn't matter what age you are, you can still get the benefits from exercise. The third thing I want to cover before we get into some of the stuff with the studio and helping you just optimize your business is the impact of food and nutrition, right? So statistically speaking, today, I know in the US, 40% of United States Americans are clinically obese. Up to 50 or 60% of our society is overweight. What happens with this excessive fat that we're carrying onto our bodies is that it promotes inflammation. Now, fats can store and buffer toxins, and that's an important component. And that's why you don't want too little of it. But what happens is these excessive fat stores actually promote inflammation. And if you look at Time magazine's cover back in the early 2000s, chronic inflammation was the silent killer. You are more prone to cardiovascular disease, cancers, neurological, neurodegenerative conditions. I mean, you list the condition, inflammation, and blood sugar instability is a part of that complex. And so while this is really important and we understand the outcomes of that, why this is important is that it's no longer just about eating food and having good food being in your body, but We know that your food that you eat and put into your body also has a really big impact on your brain. So the gut microbiome, the bacterial colonies that sit in your intestinal tract, are essentially these bugs that are opportunistic kind of bugs that live in symbiotic relationship with you and your body. They're still in the outside world because anything that goes in from here all the way to the other end is actually just contained in the body, but it's not part of you. These bugs use the food that you put in your body as fuel to produce byproducts. The fuel that you put in will dictate the byproducts that they put out. The reason we want you to have a high fiber diet or a diet full of good fats, good protein, complex carbohydrates is that you're actually feeding the bugs that live inside your body. And those bugs in turn create molecules. They create like things like short chain fatty acids, neurotransmitters that can have an impact on your metabolic and your neurological health. There are studies right now on mice and rodents, and they're moving into human clinical trials where they're doing fecal transplants from mice that have anxiety or anxiety-like tendencies. They're taking those fecal transplants, which contain the microbiome and the bugs of those mice, and they're moving them into healthy mice. And what they're noticing is that that fecal transplant of the microbiome is causing these normal mice to now have anxious tendencies. And the reverse is also true. So they're taking normal gut microbiome tissue and fecal transplants from mice and putting it into mice that have anxious tendencies. And they're noticing that the opposites actually occur and they're reversing these mental health outcomes in these characteristics. We are just scratching the surface on the metabolic capacity and the understanding of the gut brain and the brain gut axis. What I'm going to tell you is that food is becoming a centerpiece for understanding metabolic and brain health. And this is the current neurodegenerative model. Inflammation starts in the gut. It's from chronic poor diets, lack of exercise, poor sleep. It impacts the brain neurologically. It affects us structurally. And now we have impacts neurologically and emotionally and even cognitively. So, as much as that is important for your personal health, what I'm going to tell you is that as a founder and as an entrepreneur, all of these things matter for you and your business because you are the sole key factor for your personal health and your professional health. So the moment that you think you can burn the candle at both ends, and Shashi can stay up way too late and try and pull an all-nighter to finish a project, and she has a big pitch the next morning, I promise you that you're going to have delayed effects because of that. And as much as we know about these things personally, what I'm going to tell you is that these things affect you from a business perspective as well, right? Think of the board meeting that you have where you have to be creative and you have to be on top of it and you have to remember facts and figures and information. Or let's say if you're Michael and you're going to like pitch a company or a project and you're looking for seed funding and you get in front of an investor and you're fumbling your words and you don't necessarily know where you're going with your story, all these things can have an impact on you. And so as much as we're trying to separate, work-life balance, as much as I would love to have that in my life, I don't think it's a realistic thing or expectation to be able to do that. Your personal health will allow you to optimize and enhance your professional health. And I've seen this personally in the studio with what we've been building. I mean, we've gone through our ups, we've gone through our downs with fundraising, executing on projects, tasks. Burnout is a very real thing for so many founders. And I think we can just take a weekend off and like recover and get back at it. What I'm going to tell you is that this is something that happens at every single moment throughout the day. And it's the small daily decisions that you often make that manifest to be even larger outcomes throughout your life, both personally and professionally. And so as much as there's a ton of rabbit holes that we could go down with regards to how to execute, how to, go about these things, like I'm not here to diagnose you or be your doctor, right? But I think what's important to understand is that the game is quickly changing with regards to what founders and what entrepreneurs are doing to keep themselves at the top of their game. And outside of getting into anything with longevity or getting anything specifically, sticking with the fundamentals will allow you to fundamentally grow your business and most likely 5 to 10x your productivity and ROI. The hardest part with that is that you just have to take complete ownership of doing those things because no one else is going to do that for you. And so, as much as I would love to say, take this magic pill, here's the magic procedure, here's the next LLM that you can use to modify and do all this, it's not there yet. And even being heavily invested in the longevity space, what I'm going to tell you is I still don't think we're going to be there in the next 5 or 10 years. So it falls on you as the founder or entrepreneur to be able to take that and own it. And I promise you, the moment you do, your business is going to be better, Your personal life's going to be better. Your family life's going to be better. Your mental health is going to be better. And everything around you is going to feel like it's just a little bit easier to do because you finally have your brain back. So I know that might have been a lot for a couple of you here. What I want you to know is that you're in the driver's seat and you're in control of all these things. So at the end of the day, the TLDR is there's a lot of things that you could be doing or that you know you maybe should be doing. What I'm going to empower you to do is take ownership of that and understand that all the things that you're doing in your personal life will help you optimize your professional life. So, Dan, I want to leave maybe a minute or two for questions or comments on that, but I know everyone else has things to get to, and I have another meeting bumping up as well. So, happy to field any questions or comments on from anybody out there. So,
That's fantastic. Thanks very much.
of
Yeah,
course,
James.
So many questions, and I really, really enjoyed that, Eric. So thank you.
yeah, of course,
I've been into this space for a few years. Followed and have read David Sinclair's book,
yep.
um, Longevity. Gary Bareka. I listen to a lot of what he has to say, and I think this is a really interesting emerging space because I know other founders and entrepreneurs who do burn themselves out, and I have burnt out myself. And I am really making an effort to embrace these sort of lifestyle changes to make my productivity better and give myself and my business a better
Good on you.
chance. So it's been a pleasure listening to you, and I'd love to have a follow up and a deeper dive into what it is you do and what you
Happy
teach as
to.
well.
Happy to, yeah. I've done happy to take that offline, James. I'm in the startup stand-up group, so um, just ping me and kind of just tag me, and my information's here. So just shoot me an ad on WhatsApp, and we can make that happen. So
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
of
Yeah,
course.
I'll make sure I've got your details, and
Yeah, sounds
yeah,
good.
let's pick it up. Thanks, Eric.
Happy to. Yeah, of course.
That's that was really good, and it was interesting, like you said about the certain kind of sleep insomnia, sleep apnea, that sort of thing, becoming a new father or new parent, as you probably know yourself. So
I've
what
been there.
so what would you recommend for people that have those sorts of situations? I know obviously with sleep apnea you can have the mask, which does help you sleep deeper and things like that. And obviously
Yeah.
insomnia, there's people take sleeping tablets, but having a sleeping tablet isn't really proper sleep, is it? It's not, it's just forced sleep. It's not natural cycles. Is that correct? Or what can people
Correct.
do?
Yeah, you're right on that. Even with the new medications coming out, they're getting more targeted with specific, how to push neurotransmitters and try and get people to be in different states. But the best form of sleep you're gonna get is natural sleep, right? And so that's why those sleep habits are so crucial and so important to have. And I think there's just no way to get around that, to be fair, unfortunately. So yeah, I mean the 3-2-1 rule is so effective. Outside of having a true pathological condition where you've been diagnosed with something, I think that like you can do a lot in your personal life, and really at the end of the day, Dan, like the best thing to do is to try and see what works best for you, right? Like that is the default, unfortunate answer, but I have so many patients who are like, this worked for me, this didn't work for me, and so trial and error is huge. You'll know your body better than any provider will, and I think you should, right?
Mm,
I think moving forward, and as James mentioned, I think the future of longevity is just I'm going to have my own personal assistant where my Aura Ring and my Apple Watch are going to tell me all the data that I need, and I don't need my doctor to ask me how I'm sleeping anymore. They'll have access to my data. And so now they can have a conversation, be intentional about other things that are more important than asking me how I'm sleeping or taking my blood pressure, right? Those are important factors, but they will be automated and we'll know way more about that. And so you are going to be the expert and you should be the expert of your own health. And the moment you become that, the moment is you start making the changes that you need.
that's brilliant. I've got one more question and then
Go for it.
see. So just regarding sleep, my wife always says this to me that the hours after midnight are not as good as the hours before midnight. So if you
Yeah.
had, say, 8 hours between 10 and 6, for example, it's better than 12 till 8, for example. It's is that correct? And
From what I know, everyone's different. And so there are some people who are night owls. There are some people who are, more, they're going to go to bed earlier. Like I'm in bed, I'm in bed at like 9:30 every night, and I get up at 5, and that really works for me. But some people can't get to bed till midnight or 1 o'clock. These diurnal, these chronological clocks are different for everybody, and there's some theories that they're genetic from coming from your parents and some genetic lineage there, but you can't use that as an excuse to say, well, I only get up at this time. You can change those in some way, shape, or form. But as long as you're getting restorative sleep, and really the best gauge for that isn't a wearable or an output, it's really how you feel. So that's always the best thing. So as long as you're getting your sleep and you feel well rested in the morning, there you go. If not, then it's time to play with some of those factors.
That's awesome. That's really good. As well as doing this, well, I own two companies, obviously, but I'm also a presenter, present a monthly business radio show. I'll have to get you
Okay.
on my radio show at some point.
Yeah, I'd
It'd be
love to.
lovely.
Happy to make that
So,
happen. Yeah, follow up with me on WhatsApp. We'll make that happen. So,
yeah, cool,
and
awesome. I'll add you on LinkedIn as well. So
yeah,
that'd be
sounds
awesome.
good. And if there are any questions, feel free to throw them out in the WhatsApp group. I have to get to my next meeting, so I apologize for
Cool.
the push. But thank you again for having me.
Yeah, it's been
Great
a
meeting
pleasure.
again, and look forward to having chats with everybody after this too. So,
That's brilliant. So thank you, everyone. Thanks, Dr. Erik Reis, and have a great
cheers.
weekend, everyone.
Yeah, cheers. Thank
See you
you.
later.